First of all, I'd like to start this meeting by recognizing the homeland of the 30 First Nation communities of this area that we now call the FERD, where we live, work, and learn. The important decisions that we make here at the local government level can affect First Nation communities and Indigenous peoples and organizations in many different ways, both today and into the future. So as part of our collective responsibility, I commit that we continually examine the work we do to ensure our project plans, initiatives, and discussions are guided by the principles of inclusion, collaboration, and reconciliation. Also like to acknowledge that yesterday was Indigenous Veterans Day, and many people celebrated that across the province as well. And we thank all of our veterans for the sacrifice that they give in advance of Remembrance Day here this weekend. So with that in mind, I'd like to call to order the November 9th meeting of the Regional and Corporate Services Committee. Ms. Kinnaman, first item.
Looking for approval of the agenda and late items.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's moved by Director Facio, second by Director Horn. Any opposed? All in favor? Motion carries. Next item.
4.1 is the draft Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting minutes of October the 12th, 2023.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Popov, seconded by Director Pranger. Questions? None. All in favor? Opposed if any. Item carries. Next item.
5.1 is the FERD board and committee meeting schedule for 2024.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Ross, seconded by Director Adamo. Questions on the schedule? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed if any. Item carries. Next item.
5.2 is an information item. It's requests for access to records under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. It's the 2023 update.
Thank you. Director Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for staff that I don't necessarily need an answer for today, but I'm wondering if we can have when this information comes to the larger board meeting. And I just wondered whether or not the costs associated with collecting the $10 fee were offset by the $10 fee. And so, as I said, I didn't advise staff in advance that I would be asking that. It hasn't seemed to impact the number, but if it's costing us to collect it, that would be interesting information. Thank you.
I bet you Miss Van Ness could tell us that because I already spoke to her this our agenda review. Miss Van Ness.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Horn. Freedom of information requests. This is a service that we are legislated to provide, and largely it is a heavy administrative work on this. There's very limited fees that we can charge under the Act. And certainly just collecting the $10 fee is part of that. I don't have any statistics I can provide at this moment. I could try and quantify that work as part of the board meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Don't see any. Next item.
6.1 is our asset management policy. There is a motion for your consideration.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Facio, second by Director Johnson. Discussion. Director Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious, staff, through the chair, just how big a project this might turn into and what costs might be associated with it, specifically costs that would flow through to the electoral areas.
Sure. I think we'll just turn things over to our Chief Financial Officer just to give some understanding of asset management requirements under legislation, as well as good practice, good accounting practices, and how they relate to our organization's assets as a whole.
Slonsborough.
Okay, thank you for the question. Through the chair to Director Dickey. Doing the asset management the policy as it stands alone, there are no direct impacts. However, we did have costs associated with some of the earlier goals with doing the asset inventory and the new appraisals. The new property appraisals did increase our insurance on an annual basis because those were quite dated. The recent appraisals we had, actually, that's a contradiction. They're not recent. They were about 9 or 10 years old. So they're very dated, and we had a few years of actual savings, and we were fortunate we didn't have any insurance claims. So that was one cost. We've had costs associated. We will have, it's in the proposal for the electoral area administration and the regional administration budgets. The asset management software. So that's something that we are looking forward to. We had that in the operational report. That report, roughly those costs are in the approximately $200,000 range for a software system. I can get the exact figures that we had in that report. I don't have those at my fingertips, but approximately $200,000 for a software system. But this policy, as I say, doesn't have any direct costs. What it really will do is outline the vision and the standards for the organization for the future on what our expectations are on how we maintain our assets, and then the next phase of this project will be the strategy. So this is the higher level policy. The strategy will come in and tell us, it will guide us, and we will be creating those guidance with our internal steering committee and best practice research. Is really on how we will go about enacting this policy. So will it be additional processes internally on the forms when things come forward for budgetary approval? Will we be taking into account social impacts? So all of those things in the policy will then lay into processes to our next phase. We also have had there will be indirect costs associated with the asset retirement obligations, but that's something that's required in legislative and also accounting standards for asset retirement obligations. So I've gave you a very long answer, but this specific policy does not have any direct costs, but there are other costs in the future.
But in terms of the costs for electoral areas, generally speaking, asset management is a corporate function, so that would be spread across all of our jurisdictions.
Thank you. So I'm assuming through the chair that this is going to have some impacts on the level of reserves required for each of these service areas, and that there'll be a staff component, that there's obviously staff costs to just handle the day-to-day operation of this system.
Through the chair to Director Dickey, two questions there. One is the impact of reserves. That's our next policy. So that policy will be coming forward to the board on what best practices are and what those targets should be on how we're contributing to our reserves. And then the second question on staff impact. We've built it into our existing work plan with our existing staff at the moment. However, the implementation of the software will require short-term resources to help facilitate a system implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dickey. Other questions on asset management? And I'm not sure, I can't see our folks that are online on my screen. So maybe if you just let me know if Director Dixon has a question. Oh, there, I see her now. No, don't see any other questions. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The item carries. Next item.
7.1 is the Agassiz Air Quality Monitoring Station update. It's an information item. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Direct? Nope, you're good.
Yes, I need this. No questions, but happy to continue to be able to participate and provide the space, the land for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item.
7.2 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Hope and Electoral Area B Arena and Swimming Pool Local Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1717.
Thank you. We're in a seconder. It's moved by Director Damo, seconded by Director Smith. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, opposed if any, item carries. Next item.
7.3.1 is the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Indigenous Cultural Safety and Cultural Humility Training Grant application.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Popov, seconded by Director Pranger. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, opposed if any, item carries. Next item.
7.4.1 is the BC Air Access Program funding application.
Thank you. It's good news. It's moved by Director Pranger, seconded by Director Smith. Discussion. None, all in favor, opposed if any, item carries. Next item.
7.4.2 is the Parks and Park Facility Closure Policy update.
Okay, it's moved by Director Ross, seconded by Director Johnson. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, opposed if any, item carries. Next item.
8.1 is the 2023 to 2026 strategic plan. There is a motion for your consideration.
Thank you. That's moved by Director Johnson, seconded by Director Horn. Discussion on the updates. Thank you to staff and to our contractor for assisting with those updates, changes. Director Horn, go ahead.
Just echoing the thank you to everybody, because I was a bit surprised it came back as quickly as it did, very pleasantly surprised. And I thought our thoughts from the last session were well captured. Next steps is my question through the chair to staff.
Ms. Kinnaman?
Sure. So through the chair to Director Horn. So once adopted, we will incorporate this into our departmental work planning over the course of this board term. And as was identified in the report, the proposal is to report back to the board and community on an annual basis on the progress of all of the various action items, as well as provide staff with an opportunity to add action items as they might come up throughout the course of any calendar year.
Follow up, if I may,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. Are staff looking to come back with particular KPIs for some of the items for board consideration? I'll say that I think that would be a good idea. Perhaps not across all of it. It's a rather extensive strategic plan, but I'm thinking in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 and some dashboarding for people around that.
Sure.
Kinnaman?
Through the chair to Director Horn. That is certainly something that we'll be working through with our management team. Some of the items are difficult to measure. And so through conversations with the various subcommittees, such as the chair and mayor's task force committee, we've got so many different names for our committees, the mayor and chair's committee, we will look at some of those, particularly those advocacy items, and figuring out exactly how do you measure success. So those will be ongoing conversations. And as I said, to having conversations on an annual basis will provide us with that opportunity to fine tune things along the way.
Other questions, comments? I think we applied for one of those that UBCM grant we just applied for. I could see that as factoring in some of that cultural humility safety training into our emergency preparedness programs. Factors large into some of the work that's proposed. So could be one we could check off pretty quick there. Other question, comments? Don't see any. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any. Item carries. Next item.
Moving down to reports by directors.
Thank you, directors. Be your opportunity. Director Facio.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, we had a presentation last night from the regional district regarding the regional growth 2050. A great presentation. I just wanted to thank the 2 staff members that were there. And if you're interested, on the 18th of November is the big light up for the Festival of Lights in Harrison Hot Springs. And this year we're going to have fireworks as well. So come along, free hot chocolate. And if you find me, you might get a prize. Thank you.
He's gonna sing you a song. Director Smith.
Director Facio, is this Where's Waldo contest? Is that what you're doing?
Other reports from board directors. Don't see any. Ms. Kinnaman, next item.
Now we move to public question period for items relevant to the agenda. We do not have any members of the public joining us in the boardroom this morning, but perhaps our corporate officer, Jamie Van Ness, has some folks online.
Ms. Van Ness.
Thank you. We do have one member of the public joining us online today. This would be your opportunity to ask a question relevant to the agenda. You can just hit the raised hand function to indicate you have a question. While we're waiting, I'll just note we have not received any written questions from the public. And it would appear our guest does not have any questions. We can move on.
Great. Next item.
Looking for a resolution to close the meeting.
Thank you.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Director Facio, seconded by Director Smith. All in favor? Opposed, if any. Item carries. We'll set up the close. 1
Thank
minute.
you.